Thank you. And good evening. I'd like to call to order the District of Seashell regular council meeting of Wednesday, July 21st. It is 7 p.m. And first, are there any declarations of conflict with any of the items in the agenda today? Seeing none, I'd like to acknowledge that we are situated in the traditional territory of the Seashell Nation. And we have an agenda in front of us. Are there any additions to the agenda? Councillor Toth.
Thank you. I'd like to add an item of new business, which is the ebb tide non-potable water station.
Thank you. And I have an item that was sent out to council as well. It's a letter to the federal government regarding cannabis. I hope some of you have had an opportunity to read it. I know it's quite late in getting to you, but we'll talk about why that came forward when we get to the item. So item 9.1 will be the letter to the federal government, and then 9.2 will be the ebb tide non-potable water station. Any other additions or deletions to the agenda? All right, I look for a motion to adopt the amended agenda. Moved, seconded, all in favor? Thank you. Item number 5.1, minutes of the 7 p.m. regular council meeting of July 7th, 2021 for adoption. Any errors or omissions in the minutes first before we do the motion? Seeing none, I'd look for a motion to adopt. Moved, seconded, all in favor? Thank you. Any business arising from the minutes? Seeing none, moving on to receipt of committee and commission minutes and reports. So we have first the minutes of the Advisory Planning Commission meeting. I'd look for a motion to receive these. Moved, seconded, all in favor? Thank you. And item 7.2, the minutes of the Committee of the Whole meeting of Wednesday, July 14th. This is for receipt and endorsement. All right, would someone like to move receipt and endorsement? Moved, seconded, all in favor? Thank you. Moving on to bylaws. Item 8.1. This is the road closure and disposition amendment bylaw number 527-01-2021, housing agreement amendment bylaw number 534-01-2021, and subdivision application for Tower and Tyler Roads, Foo Living. A motion to receive the report first. Moved and seconded, all in favor? Thank you. And Mr. Hall, over to you.
Thank you, Mayor and Council. So you saw this at your last council meeting. Since that time, we've done the required notice of disposition for the amendment to the road closure bylaw. No comments were received from the public, and both bylaws are presented to you tonight for adoption. Both the road closure amendment bylaw and then housing agreement amendment bylaw, as previously discussed, both associated with a proposed subdivision application. And both required based on a number of minor issues due to the passage of time since the original application and the original road closure bylaw, but basically ready for adoption. And this would allow then the subdivision application to move forward for the applicant themselves to prepare revised documents, survey plans, etc., based on the new road alignment.
Thank you. Any questions by council? So there are two recommendations on page 23. Someone interested? Councillor Scott.
I'll move recommendation 2 and 3 that council adopt the road closure and disposition amendment bylaw 527-1-2021, and the council adopt the Emerson Clustered Residential Housing Agreement Amendment bylaw 534-1-2021.
Thank you. Is there a seconder for the recommendation? Seconded. All those in favor? Thank you. So moving on to item 8.1B on page 25. This is District of Seashell bylaw number 527-01-2021, Emerson Road and Tower Road, being a bylaw to amend District of Seashell road closure and disposition bylaw number 527-2013. I look for someone to move adoption. Moved, seconded, all in favor? Thank you. And then next item is 8.1C, starting on page 30. This is District of Seashell bylaw number 534-01-2021 Housing Agreement Amendment Bylaw, a bylaw to amend a housing agreement under section 483 of the Local Government Act. I'd look for someone to move adoption of this. Moved, seconded, all in favor? Thank you. Moving on to item 8.2A. This is fees and charges amendment bylaw number 575-3, 2021. Motion to receive the report. Moved, seconded, all in favor? Thank you. And Ms. Frank.
Thank you, Your Worship. The purpose of this item is for council to consider adoption of fees and charges amendment bylaw number 575-3, 2021. This bylaw was in front of council at its July 7th regular meeting, at which time council gave first reading to the bylaw as amended, and then second and third reading. The amendment was to correct the Schedule D to the bylaw to remove the words letter of comfort that weren't needed there. So that change has been made to Schedule D. It's on the top of page 42 of the agenda. That's been changed. So it would now be in order for council to consider adoption of this bylaw. Thank you.
Thank you. All right, council, I would like to proceed. Councillor Toth.
I will move recommendation 2, the council proceed with adoption of fees and charges amendment bylaw number 575-3, 2021.
Is there a seconder for the recommendation? Seconded. All those in favor? Thank you. Moving on to item 8.2B, which is the actual bylaw on page 38. This is District of Seashell fees and charges amendment bylaw number 575-3, 2021. A bylaw to amend fees and charges for certain District of Seashell municipal services. And look for someone to move adoption. Moved, seconded, all in favor? Thank you. Item 9.1. This is the letter to the federal government regarding cannabis. So this is the email that came out to you. The reason this has come forward is we made a request to UBCM to meet with the Solicitor General around cannabis and the issues we're having with regards to medical cannabis, particularly in our municipality, but also on the coast, and requesting that the revenue agreement that they signed with the federal government be implemented and they provide us with some of that revenue. They came back and said before they schedule the meeting, they'd like to see the draft letter that we want them to support us in going to the federal government. So because tomorrow is the last, the last board meeting at the regional district, the town of Gibson's already had their last board meeting or council meeting before September. We're looking to get this moving forward as quick as possible so that we can get it back and get those meetings scheduled. So any questions around this letter? All right, so I have a potential recommendation. And that is that council direct staff to distribute the letter dated July 21st, 2021 regarding cannabis controls and communications with local government to the Sunshine Coast Regional District Board, Town of Gibson's Council, and Seashell Nation Council, requesting their support and endorsement of a collectively signed letter to Honorable Justin Trudeau, Honorable Chrystia Freeland, Honorable Patty Hadju, Honorable David Lametti, and Honorable Bill Blair, and that the letter be sent to the province of British Columbia requesting their collaborative advocacy with the District of Seashell on cannabis controls and communications with local government. So I'd make that recommendation. Is there a seconder for the recommendation? Seconded. Any further questions or comments? All those in favor? Thank you. Item 9.2, Eptide non-potable water station. Councillor Toth.
Thank you. In the past, in previous years, we've activated a non-potable water station for the public, drawing on the groundwater from near the WRC at Eptide Road. With the dog park project in place, and knowing that we're actually going to be going to stage 3 restrictions at the end of this week, I have had inquiries from the public, and I was just curious to know if staff had given any consideration to if and when we might activate the non-potable water station this year. And if not, why not? So, and I did put that
Yes.
to Director Dillon in the earlier today, so hopefully he's able to speak to that.
Thank you.
Yes, Your Worship, through Your Worship, to address Councillor Todd's question on the Eptide non-potable water fill station. I am asking staff to look at options on how that can be activated. There's a few challenges with that this year. In the previous time we used it a few years ago, there was an access alley that people could use to go and fill at the fill point. That has since been removed as part of the construction for the Eptide Dog Park. I did ask about another laneway that's gated off right now that could be used to access that area, and due to the concerns around staff coming out of the WRC on that one, it's a one-way in and out, and also we store a lot of our chemicals in that area for the Water Resource Center. It's not a safe access location for the general public to come in and access water. So the other option I'm having staff look at is if it's feasible to have a hose fill point off Surf Circle, but that again is going to have logistical challenges because it would be out in the street. So right now, the other thing we have to consider as well is we have been using the Eptide groundwater well to offset SCRD drinking water that was used at the WRC. At one point, we were determined to be one of the largest users of SCRD drinking water. So I'm happy that we are using the groundwater well to offset that usage. So with that usage, unfortunately, it does put additional capacity on that groundwater well. So we would have to assess if there would be enough there to also supply the public. So all of the non-potable water issues we're looking at in concert with our reclaimed water feasibility study that's currently underway and being headed by our manager of development engineering and sustainability, Megan.
Councillor Toth.
Thank you. Thank you for that answer. I'm thrilled that we're using that water in the WRC because it was, to see those numbers, that's a lot of drinking water that we were using for industrial purposes in that plant. So I'm glad to hear that. I'm glad to hear that it's still something that's being looked at by staff. Hopefully we can make it happen, but it sounds like you guys are working on it in the background if it's possible this year. So thank you for that.
Thank you. I think my bigger hope is that we get some rain.
Yeah. I think we're all hoping for that, yes. All right. I'm sure you'll advise us and the community if that opens, right? If you find a way to make that happen.
Yes, we're working on it, Your Worship.
Thank you. All right, moving on. Item 10.1. This is a revised proposal for Hackett Park Stage. Motion to receive the report. Moved, seconded, all in favor? Thank you. Ms. Smith, over to you.
Thank you. Before you is a report seeking approval from council to move forward with a contractor for the accessible performance stage at Hackett Park. This item was before council at their June 16th meeting, and at that time, staff were directed to meet again with West Coast Log Homes, who is the proponent. West Coast Log Homes Dakota Ridge Builders, in order to discuss alternate options and report back to council with a recommendation on how to proceed. So as you'll see in this report, the builder had suggested that instead of waiting for construction prices to drop or redesigning the structure, the builder actually offered to make a considerable donation to the project and to seek additional donations, as well as in-kind contributions. And you'll see the revised proposal attached at the end of this report. The builder also suggested that council could consider the possibility of selling the naming rights for the performance stage However, staff do recommend that if that is something council wishes to consider, that we first have a sponsorship policy in place to guide the naming process, not just for this facility, but for any other asset we may choose to sell the naming rights for. And staff are recommending that we do move forward with this new proposal. But you'll note that council does have the option of moving forward with the proposal without accepting the donations and instead funding the additional costs through capital reserve. So be happy to answer any questions you may have. For more finance questions, you might want to direct them to our Director of Finance, and for anything building related, construction related, might be able to get a more thorough answer out of our Director of Engineering or our building official.
Thank you. Council, any questions? Councillor Toth.
Thank you. Thank you to our staff for going back and talking to Dakota Ridge Builders, and thank you to Dakota Ridge Builders for stepping up with that incredible offer. I know that, you know, I had problems and concerns about the cost escalation in the past, and when we saw this previously, and I still have concerns about the cost escalation, but the numbers now are within the realm of what I think we expected to pay when we first, you know, put this proposal together. So I'm pleased to see it. I'm pleased to see this moving forward, and I like the idea of a possible sponsorship policy. We've got this facility being built. We've got other facilities, even, you know, rooms within Rockwood. Like there are lots of options out there for us to look at partnerships with the community. So just my thoughts, and yeah, pleased to see it come back. Thank you.
Any other questions or comments? Seeing none, would someone be willing to make some recommendations?
Sorry, I couldn't get my mute off. I did have just a question, just for clarity. So the $30,000 that is listed as cash donations, that's a straight up donation, nothing, that's not involving any sort of sponsorship, right? At this point?
Correct. So what that would be is a cash donation that would be eligible for a tax receipt.
Right.
A donation receipt, and that donor or donors would have name recognition, not in the form of naming the facility, but rather on a plaque that would contain all the names of the funders and anyone who had contributed to the project. That would be on the stage. Yeah.
Okay, then I'm very happy to move recommendation 2, that council direct staff to move forward with the construction of the Hackett Park stage project in the amount of $308,000, and that the project be funded as follows: $185,525 from grants, $82,475 from capital reserve, $30,000 from cash donations, and $10,000 from in-kind donations. Recommendation 3, that council direct staff to enter into agreement for services with Dakota Ridge Builders in the amount of $274,777 for the purpose of building the accessible performance stage at Hackett Park, and that mayor and corporate officer be authorized to execute the agreement. And that council direct staff to draft a sponsorship policy for the purpose of creating a framework for soliciting, managing, and reporting sponsorships.
Thank you. Is there a seconder for those recommendations? Seconded. And then Councillor Scott, you have a question or comment?
All right. My only comment on this, as beautiful as it is I worry about vandalism and tagging on this structure, and how easy it will be for us to manage it when it happens.
Okay. Any other questions or comments? Councillor Toth.
Thank you. Actually, to follow up on the vandalism aspect, we did have some vandalism previously of not only like the washrooms and stuff at the park, but I seem to recall the gazebo on the Davis Bay Pier. which it would be a similar materials, log and wood. And I was just wondering if, was there any difficulty in remediating that graffiti, that vandalism? I don't know if anybody here's got the answer to that question though.
That could probably, I don't know if any of the staff here have that background. That could be something they could follow up and get to us. Director Taylor?
Your worship, I believe our parks manager Jamie is doing a presentation perhaps later on tonight. So if he's not here right now, Councillor Toth may want to ask the question again when he's here.
Thank you. All right, so we have some recommendations on the floor. Seeing no further questions, all those in favor? Thank you. Thank you, Ms. Smith.
Thank you. Have a good evening.
Thank you. Moving on to item 10.2. Sorry, this is the development variance permit for 5625 Derby Road, Silverstone Care Center. First motion to receive the report. Moved, seconded, all in favor? Thank you. Mr. Hall, over to you.
Thank you. I don't have a presentation for this, but it's fairly straightforward. Just a minor variance required associated with the Silverstone facility to address a structure of the porte cochere on the front of the building. It wouldn't affect any other setbacks or any other portion of the building, just this porte cochere structure on the front entrance to the building. And this was something, fortunately, through the rezoning process, was not identified till it was too late, past the public hearing, that this wasn't accounted for in the proposed zone, which required a variance that you're dealing with now. And ultimately, this was part of the original building design, and the variance would just authorize the structure as proposed.
Thank you. Any questions or comments? Councillor Toth.
I'd like to move recommendation 2, that development variance permit 2021-06 be approved and issued.
Is there a seconder for the recommendation? Seconded. All those in favor? Thank you. Thank you, Mr. Hall. Moving on, item 10.3. This is wayfinding sign grant application, Island Coastal Economic Trust. It's a Thrive grant application for wayfinding signs. Motion to receive the report. Moved, seconded, all in favor? Thank you. And Ms. Paulson, over to you.
Thank you, Your Worship. Ms. Rogers is away today, so I am standing in to present the report. So as indicated in the report on the agenda, we are looking to seek Council's approval for staff to apply for an Island Coast Economic Trust Thrive Stream grant in the amount of $46,250. And that will cover the design, fabrication, and installation of 3 pedestrian wayfinding signs in the downtown area of Seashell. So the purpose of the Thrive Stream is to provide support and funding for minor infrastructure improvements related to downtown revitalization. And the proposal that's on the table is to add 3 pedestrian signs to the downtown area of Seashell. The proposed design is included in the report. I was hoping to share my screen, but I'm having some technical difficulties, so I won't be able to do that. So the overall design has been completed to be in keep it consistent with the other wayfinding signs that have been added to the downtown area of Seashell. So there's one at the corner of the highway and Cowrie Street, and then one near the Municipal Hall on the corner of Cowrie and Ocean, or Rosina Giles Way. So the overall look of these signs will be consistent with that, but the final content of those signs has not been finalized yet. So that would be done with consultation from the Downtown Business Association and business owners in the area as well. The previous business case that was attached provided some additional information about that process related to the creation of that design. However, this new proposal is not as large. That was a much larger proposal for a larger funding amount, and the maximum amount you can get from the Thrive grant is $50,000. So this is a downscaled version to add just pedestrian signs that will show people the way to various popular areas of our downtown core. The proposed locations for these pedestrian signs would be Friendship Park, Acacia Park, and near Trail and Cowrie. And one other thing to note is that the construction of this design, the construction of the signs will be it'll be similar to the hydro box wraps. So when we do have changes with our amenities, businesses, anything that we want to include on that sign or the maps, it will be fairly easy to just replace the map, and the sign itself will be able to be in place for decades to come, hopefully. And that's all I had to say. Any questions on that?
So any questions or comments? All right, there is a recommendation on page 59. What would you like to do?
I'll move recommendation 2 that council approve the Island Coast Economic Trust Thrive Grant application for the 3 pedestrian wayfinding signs.
All right, is there a seconder for the recommendation? Seconded? Seeing no further questions, all those in favor? Thank you. Thank you, Ms. Paulson.
Thank you. Have a great night.
Thank you. Moving on, item 10.4. This is COVID-19 Safe Restart Fund grant for local government's variable message board and additional cubicles. Motion to receive the report. Moved, seconded, all in favor? Thank you. And Mr. Dillon, over to you.
Your worship, I don't have a formal presentation. The report speaks for itself. These variable message board signs, I think, were ubiquitous during the COVID-19 pandemic, still continue to be used to speak about things like social distancing, vaccination sites. And so in terms of COVID-19, this has direct applicability to that. If we need to have some additional messages this fall, then we have those available. But in addition to that, the message board signs would have the capabilities to log and collect speed data, can be used for speed warnings as well, can be deployed by a pickup truck to different locations, such as reminding motorists to slow down during back to school. It's quite common to have to remind motorists around the fall time when kids are back in school that they should be slowing down. And so it has multiple purposes, and we think we recommend that these be purchased for the district. It would serve many purposes. And in terms of the cubicles, with the space limitations at the municipal hall and just space in general, 2 additional cubicles at the WRC would be good for our summer student program, as well as having a hot desk for any visiting consultants that would be helping us on our engineering projects. And we have many of them in the works and a lot of projects underway.
Thank you. Councillor Toth.
Thank you. Thrilled to see the message board signage come forward. I know it's something we've talked about in the past and in past years. One quick question about the cubicles. Where in the WRC, like, are you looking to cleave off a portion of the meeting space to turn into cubicles, or just sort of trying to get an image of where?
Yeah, when you first enter, there's a large foyer and meeting room area with a large board table, and we would be grabbing 2 small cubicles in that area.
Thank you. Councillor Kuster.
Just a quick question. Do we have any of those variable message boards right now? Like we do have, or we just like?
We currently do not have them. The ones that have been seen on the Sunshine Coast are owned by MOTI or their contracted maintenance contractor.
Perfect. I think it's great.
All right. Would someone like to make the recommendation on page 67? Councillor Kuster,
I'll move recommendation 2 that council approves spending up to a maximum of 69,000 of COVID-19 Safe Restart Grant for local governments funds in 2021 for variable message boards and additional cubicles.
and seconded. Seeing no further questions or comments, all those in favor? Thank you. Thank you, Mr. Dillon. Moving on to item number 10.5. This is with regards to the Seashell Airport lease modification agreements. I look for a motion to receive the report. Moved, seconded, all in favor? Thank you. Ms. Frank.
Thank you, Your Worship. The purpose of this item is for council to consider approving modification agreements to existing Seashell Airport leases that expired on December 31st, 2020, and which have a one-time option to renew for a further 5-year term. That clause is in lease. So by way of some background, in 2000, the district entered into a number of lease agreements for parcels of land at the Seashell Airport using the same template that had been prepared at the time by our solicitor. And in those leases, they all have a 20-year term with an expiration date of December 31st, 2020. And they all have a one-time option to renew for an additional 5-year term as one of the clauses in those agreements. I've quoted that clause there on the top of page 72. But in essence, it says that as long as everything else is in good standing with the lease, that they've paid their fees, et cetera, that they provide notice to the district in advance, they basically have the right to extend the lease for a further 5-year terms under all of the same conditions, except with the condition of another 5-year option to renew. There is only the one. We hadn't heard from any of agencies indicating that they wish to exercise their options, so staff followed up with each of them. And we have received now responses from 5 of the leaseholders, as I've named there, indicating that they do want to exercise their option to renew. There are 2 other outstanding leases that still need to come forward for council's review. But when we reached out to those licensees, it was made known to us that there were some other, the parties to the agreement had changed and they had not brought that to our attention. So we need to do a little bit more work with those 2 leases and they'll come forward separate to council. But for now, we wanted to get these ones acted on. And so the recommendation 2 in front of you lists the leases that are ready for the 5-year term renewal, and a modification agreement would be in order to effect that. And I've attached a copy of the proposed modification agreement that we will use for each. And I've also attached written notice from each of those lease licensees that they do wish to exercise their option to renew. And that's my report, and be pleased to answer any questions. Thank you.
Thank you. Councillor Lamb.
So the situation is that these leases, we really can't alter the leases. The payment schedules and the 5-year term is basically set from 20 years ago.
That's correct. I mean, they are 20-year-old leases. This report is just to deal with the existing clause in the report or in the agreement that allows for the one-time only option to renew. So this business item isn't considering any other amendments to the leases.
Yeah. So we can't raise their rents or do anything like that because they're just exercising their right under the lease from the previous.
Correct.
Right.
Just to clarify, when you say we can't, I mean, it's a lease. I'm just saying that that's not what the purpose of this report is. You know, council could direct some further action, but the purpose of this report is just to deal with the 5-year option to renew and not open up the idea of making any other changes to the leases at this time. And I should say that some licensees have asked us that as we've gone through this process of getting their in making contact with them to deal with this this item. We have been asked, you know, by the licensees if they can we renew it for another 20 years? Can we change some of the clauses? So, you know, at this time, staff has not received any direction that council was interested in opening any of that up at this time. So as I say, licensees have been told that this was coming forward to council just to deal with the one-time only option to renew.
Okay, to address the one comment by Councillor Lamb, the leases, I believe, have a cost of living increase in them, correct? So every year the amount goes up based on the CPI.
Correct. Based on the Vancouver CPI, it's written into the license. Yes.
Councillor Lamb, did you have follow-up?
Yeah, I just think that this is just proving that we need some kind of some sort of an oversight committee to you know, to monitor the airport and to, you know, we're spending $4 million up there and we want to make this thing you know, I shouldn't say a profitable airport, but one that we don't have to go back to the taxpayers for money every year. So it just really, to me, it really brings to light that this has to be dealt with properly. And just a silly little thing, but you know, so these leases are $756 a year. So if you go to Popeyes and rent an 8x8 container, they're $99 a month. So at $760 a year, you're paying $63 a month. So it just absolutely, I understand airports, there's different criteria for everything, but these are absolutely stupid. And it's not fair to the taxpayer. And it's not fair to the district for what we've just done up there. That's my comment.
Thank you. Councillor Toth.
Thank you. I did actually want to follow up on the cost of the leases there, because 20-year-old agreement set in a certain inflationary increase every year. I believe it was in 2013 we got a land valuation done and looked at the, you know, the going forward values of land up there. So I'm just wondering if what we're charging comes anywhere close to what that previous report indicated we should be charging. You know, what are we charging? Councillor Lamb mentioned 7 something, but I don't know if that's current or if that was from 2020. Yeah, I'll start there with my questions. Thank you.
Thank you.
Your worship, I actually am not sure what the current lease fees are, and I'd hesitate to make a guess. There's certainly not anything close to what the number is in the original 2000 lease, because they have gone up with the cost of living clause that's in them. And I'm sorry, I'm not familiar with the comparison with the report that was done. So staff can follow up, but I'm not able to answer that myself right now.
Thank you. Councillor Toth.
And then another question is, these lot leases, are they open air storage? Do they build hangars on them? Can they build storefronts on them? I'm just high level, the limitation of the leases here.
Thank you. Through you, your worship, the language in the lease, in these template leases that we're talking about, says that the land will be used to place a hangar on, and that the use of the land shall be for a hangar building. And that's all it says. There's one clause that says that.
Thank you. Councillor Scott.
Well, that segues into my question is how are we ensuring enforcement that that these facilities are used for what's intended on the lease and not for other uses.
Honestly, through you, your worship, I'm personally not familiar with any enforcement activities that we may have taken. I myself don't actually manage the operations of the airport, so I again can't answer that. I'm not aware of any enforcement activities that may have taken place.
Mr. Douglas, did you want to comment?
Yes, Your Worship. Thank you. A lot of the leases that are in place now have been there for quite some time. And other than for maybe 2 or 3 different properties, most of them are airport hangars and they are used as such. Any leases going forward that we're doing, meaning new, we're making sure they're airport related and airport likely hangars that would go in there, unless it's a bigger business going kind of down further down the airport, but we'd still want it to be airport related if we were to lease more land. So, you know, any changes that were made had been made to the use of 3 of these buildings were made years ago.
Councillor Scott?
Wouldn't you agree that's in violation of the existing lease that they're looking to extend on the 5 years?
Violation, well, it isn't being used as what we intended. No, you're right. However, I don't know how they got to the spot where there's three buildings that were used for alternate purposes. So before I could make much of a statement or recommendation, I would need to know a little bit more history on the transformation there.
Okay, Councillor Scott, anything further on that?
Well, maybe instead of approving a 5-year extension on this, we need to. You have a number of leasees there that are compliant with their lease, and maybe we need to ensure that before we just stamp another 5-year extension for the ones that aren't compliant, we need to go forward and make that so.
Okay. Come back to that in a moment. Councillor Councillor Toth.
A quick question and then perhaps a motion, because I understand where Councillor Scott's coming from. Nope, I've lost the question, so I might as well put forward a suggestion here. Well, why don't I move a motion to excuse me, my question. Is there a timeliness to this, given that the leases have already expired? Is this something we have to pass tonight, or can this wait until our next meeting or until September?
Your worship, through you, I mean, yes, on the one hand, yes, it is time sensitive considering the leases are technically expired. The fact that we have received these written option to renewal letters means at least it's in the works. But you know, technically, I guess we're collecting lease fees on a lease that no longer exists, which we normally wouldn't want to see happen. So there is some time sensitivity to it. We wouldn't want to see it be held in abeyance for too long. But on the other hand, if council feels that some action needs to be taken prior to or in conjunction with the renewals, that's up to you. That's really up to you.
Okay,
Councillor Toth.
I'm going to take a stab at a motion here and we'll see what happens. I'd like to move that we defer this until we can get some information back about the land costs of where we currently are with the leases versus where we expect to be with the leases, and confirmation of compliance with the leases from the existing leaseholders.
Okay, I guess I have a question about that before I get a seconder. If they come into compliance now and they sign a 5-year lease, how do we police that going forward? Right, because could come into compliance and then next week after they've signed the lease, change something back. How are we going to manage that going forward?
Honestly, at this point, I'm more concerned about renewing leases on non-conforming users. We can look
Okay.
at compliance ongoing down the road. I just don't want to renew a lease for somebody who might be running a storefront up there right now, for example.
Okay. All right, so there's a recommendation on the floor. Is there a seconder for that recommendation? Seconded, thank you. Councillor Scott. Now, question for Scott, Ms. Frank. If we're doing a motion to defer, is there any debate on the motion?
No, there was no debate on deferral. It would just be deferred until land costs are confirmed and compliant. So it would come back when that was confirmed.
Thank you. All right, so I'm going to call the question. All those in favor? Any opposed? Thank you. Are you opposed, Councillor Scott? Thank you. Would you like that recorded? Thank you. All right, Councillor Scott. Question, comment?
Well, my comment on that wasn't so much the land lease rates are as they were set. I think the concern is ensuring that that the lease is being is in compliance with what's intended. What is the intent of the land use up at the airport, and ensuring that that it is used for what the airport is intended for. Once we get through the next term of this lease extension, I think there'd be some challenges in that. But and then set the land use rates for whatever needs to be down the road. So, but the motion passed, so it doesn't. As far as the rates go, that it is what it is, and but I think it's important that we ensure that that there's compliance within the lease.
Councillor Ms. Frank, yes.
Your Worship, and just to comment on that as well. Not sure exactly what the intent is. Staff will bring back a report dealing with land costs, but yes, I would caution council that it's not really open. Really, the consideration is about the 5-year option. There really isn't an opportunity right now to open up the leases unless we want to do that both ways, because as soon as we start negotiating different lease fees, then the licensees have the opportunity to negotiate other clauses, and that certainly wasn't the intent. It was just to address the 5-year option to renew.
Mm-hmm. Thank you. All right. Moving on, the next item is Canada Community Revitalization Fund. Right, I have to go to my other agenda, or the piece that's in. This is item 10.6. This was distributed separately to us. This is for the Canada Community Revitalization Fund, CCRF, Inlet Avenue Improvement between Cowrie Street and Dolphin Avenue financial commitment. A motion to receive the report. Moved, seconded, all in favor? Thank you. Mr. Bandera.
Thank you, Your Worship. Good evening, everyone. I have a brief presentation for you tonight about Inlet Avenue improvement and a potential grant opportunity. Can you see my screen?
Yes, thank you.
Okay. The purpose of this presentation to seek council direction to apply for the Canada Community Revitalization Fund for the Inlet Avenue improvement between Cowrie Street and Dolphin Street. And also seek council resolution to secure the required matching funds, that is 25% of the estimated cost for this project. That is 239,000 from a combination of gas tax and the capital reserves. So background. The district has completed several projects within the downtown core area of its capital works program. Trail Avenue, that is between Trail Avenue waterfront and Trado Street, that is completed in 2013. Ocean Avenue, Trail Bay waterfront to Trado Street, 2014. And Inlet Avenue, Trail Bay waterfront to Cowrie Street. This is two sections. One is between Trado Street to Trail Bay waterfront. That was part of the development, watermark development. And the section between Cowrie Street to Trado Street 2014, a part of the capital works program. And also there's ongoing project Trail Avenue realignment that is expected to complete by end of August 2021. Another one is at Wharf Avenue between Cowrie Street and Dolphin. It's funded through active transportation grant, and the project is ongoing to complete it by March 2022. We are currently working with the ministry, get the ministry approval. They change a little bit from the original approval because of the new staff here now. Another one is a Shorncliffe. That's between the Shorncliffe Avenue between Trail Bay waterfront to Trado Street. That's planned 2022. That project is developer driven. And the Trail Bay Boulevard improvement between Trail Avenue and Ocean Avenue. This is a pending grant. We apply for the grant for this portion. Inlet Avenue and Mermaid North. The Inlet Avenue in question now, the project, that portion, and also Mermaid on the north area, north side. Sidewalks are only missing at this point. The project, this project is identified in capital program since 2013, but we couldn't proceed due to a lack of funding and other priorities. As you can see, this is a downtown core area with sidewalk connectivity. All the purple, currently we have the sidewalk, and this portion is missing. That is the one we are going to build part of the active transportation grant. And on Inlet Avenue, the highlighted section is the lack of sidewalk. That is the one we are going to ask. So the Inlet Avenue, this portion, and Trado Street was completed by watermark development. And the Shorncliffe, there's a negotiation we have with the developer to build the Shorncliffe from Trado Street to waterfront area. And Trail Avenue is a multi-use pathways you can see over here. So now under construction, expected to complete by end of August. And this is the current condition of Inlet Avenue. As you can see, the missing sidewalk, some areas, parallel parking, angle parking, and also the overhead BC hydro poles. And this is also Inlet current condition, a broken sidewalk, and this is the longest sidewalk over here on Seashell Inlet Road, Inlet Avenue. You can see here this is the portion we are going to improve between Cowrie Street to Dolphin Avenue. As you can see that this is a little upgrade to the design that was completed, 50% completed by previously ISL Engineering, part of the design, overall design between Trado Street to Dolphin Avenue. And this is the cross sections, what we develop for this development, for this improvement. and the 2 driving lanes over here, and the 2 parking lanes, and the wider sidewalk on each side, and the street lights. Scope of work. This is a 2 meter wide, this is downtown core area. So we are going to provide a little bit wider sidewalk, 2 meter wide sidewalk with the concrete band on each side. That will give a separation from the parking, the vehicles. When they open the doors, they have a little buffer zone to protect the pedestrians. And also we are going to provide the dark sky friendly street light with the bend arms, improved parking for vehicles and road users safely, and the full depth road reclamation, and the pre-ducting for future BCI undergrounding. So once we complete the pre-ducting at this point, in the future date, part of the BCI beautification program, we could apply for the grant for undergrounding. And also we are putting some more traffic calming for pedestrian safety. This is the financial implication. Total project cost $956,000. So Canada Community Revitalization Fund will cover 75% of the total project cost. That is $717,000. So the maximum we can claim for this $750,000, but we reach that result very close now. The district funding for the Inlet Avenue improvement at a cost of $239,000. That is 25% of the total project cost. The funding coming through $60,000 from gas tax and $179,000 from capital reserves. This is the work schedule. We assume that the grant will award within December or this year. If so, we are going to have a stakeholder engagement with the impacted property owners January 2022, and then we complete the detailed design, incorporate the public feedbacks, and if needed, we'll bring the council report to complete the detailed design to the approval. That is February 2022, and the project will tender March 2022. Project award April 22. Also, we need to come to council for council approval. And then we start the construction May 2022, and the substantial completion we expected December 2022, and the project completion March 2023. That is the project deadline. This is the council resolution. At the report from the manager of Municipal Construction and Infrastructure Renewal regarding Canada Community Revitalization Fund for Inlet Avenue improvement between Cowrie Street and Dolphin Avenue. Financial commitment received. That the council directs staff to apply for Canada Community Revitalization Fund for improvement to Inlet Avenue between Cowrie Street and Dolphin Avenue for the total project cost of $956,000, with the district portion being $239,000, and that is a 25% grant if awarded. That the funding for the Inlet Avenue improvement at a cost of $239,000 as follows: $60,000 from gas tax and $179,000 from the capital reserves. That is end of my presentation. I would happy to provide answers for any questions.
Thank you. And council, any questions? Councillor Lamb?
Yes, the servicing for the properties on the east side of Inlet Avenue, do they all go down the lane, or is the sewer and water, is it in Inlet Avenue?
I believe the sewer is from Inlet Avenue, but I don't know the water come from.
Okay. I'm just, my concern is that there is a potential, like you've got the Legion that has just purchased their property. And there's a potential with some other development going on there. So if we turn around and build this beautiful road through here with the beautiful sidewalks, is a developer going to come around next year or 2 years from now and dig it all up? And, and then the other side of that is if we go ahead and do this and do some preliminary crossings for the new development, would there be a potential to recapture some of that money from the developer?
For that, we have a public consultation and a stakeholder consultation. On January, we schedule that. And that time we will evaluate any outstanding services. If there's other outstanding services, so we will provide drive services at this point and for future use. So then we will recoup the cost for the services what we are going to provide now. So it will reduce the impact on brand new road to cut and reinstate that.
I think what Councillor Lamb's also asking though is if we put this in, can we also have the developer or whoever, is doing some development along there contribute funds after the fact to the works that we've done?
Yes, that is the kind of latecomer charges. Any works we are providing now, and we are going to get the fund back with latecomer. So we have to figure out that these funds come from, both funds come from, except one item that the money comes from the reserves. All other funds come from grants. So what the money the district pay for that, we can get the money back. But I want to ask that question from our Director of Finance, whether we are eligible to go for the latecomer and get the money back.
Mr. Douglas.
Yeah, I'd have to do a little bit of investigative work to see if we could get it back on this project. Often the latecomer goes to a third party, meaning for other developer. So I'm just I'd have to just reread that section of the legislation.
Okay, Councillor Lamb, anything follow up?
So I guess just the other thing, the infrastructure that's in the ground there now, would you be looking at it and assessing if some of it has to be replaced or not, or would you, I guess if it has to be replaced, then you'd replace it, I'm sure, but you will be looking at the infrastructure that's there.
It's a good question.
Sir, I'll respond to that, Your Worship, to address Councillor Lamb's questions. So I can confirm we do have sanitary both in Periwinkle Lane and on Inlet Avenue. So that does give us some options to go in either direction. And as we go through detailed design, we'll determine the best option for that. In terms of whether we would replace all infrastructure, that's typically the approach. We assess the condition of the assets that are there, and with the intention of doing a full replacement depending on the condition. So I think the last condition assessment would probably indicate that the sanitary and storm in that is either in a probably in a fair condition, and it's I would imagine it's at the age now where it would require full replacement. So that would all be done as part of the pre-design work leading into the detailed design. It's been the the manager of municipal construction and infrastructure renewal can comment on how old the last design work was done, but it might be long enough that we would have to do another camera inspection on that.
In addition to Director Dylan's comments, we have done some inspection, and we figured out a couple of manholes not good shape. We are re-evaluate once we receive the fund during the detailed design stage, and come back to the council for request additional funding if needed, because this cost estimate, we haven't include any underground services to upgrade. So that should come from different funding source.
Councillor Lamb, follow up? Okay, and you're muted.
It's good sometimes. Yeah, grant money is still tax money, I'm in favor of dolling this part of the place up. I'd just like to just make sure that we're moving forward at the right time, and making sure that it'd be nice to have an indication of what the developers along there are thinking, because under a normal situation, the development that's going on there would do this for us. They would do half of it. And so that's just my comments. I think it's a good project for Seashell. So probably the best thing to do is move forward. So, thank you.
Thank you. Councillor Toth.
Thank you. I appreciate what looks to be an extended timeline on this project. It seems like it should be an easy thing to move forward with, but we know how roadworks downtown go for us sometimes. This is a project a long time in the making. I seem to remember parking on the east side of Inlet at Cowrie being sort of set aside in the past to be determined at a future date. And I guess that future date is here upon us. I understand this is all very preliminary. I'm fully in support of going for the grant application. I know there's stakeholder engagement to be done. I do have concerns about the potential loss of parking along Inlet Avenue. Right now, most of it on the east side is angled parking or 90-degree stall parking, whatever. Just wondering, having looked at the report from 2013, I don't know if the information is still current or if it's something we can look at again on whether we can do angled parking or reverse angled parking or some combination of everything. Yeah, especially in front of Napa and that building across from the dentist that I mentioned. And then my other question is, do we have any inclination on what the archaeology work through this area might be?
Through your worship, archaeological, we learn previous projects. So we included a separate line item for archaeological studies for this project. And in terms of angle parking, the 2013 study completed by ISL Engineering, but still open for another consultant review, the third party review for in the future if the grant approved. So then still open for everything to get the people's ideas and to the best of the Seashell concerns.
Thank you. Councillor Lamb.
Yeah, two quick questions. Number one is there a time frame when this money, if we do get the grant, is there a time frame when it has to be completed by? And number two is we seem to have another May start that puts us right into the middle of our busiest tourist time. And I don't know if anybody's noticed it, but we have had a few tourists around this summer. So I guess we might as well be consistent and keep doing it in May, June, July. Why not? I don't know.
Mr. Bandera.
Through your worship, the deadline for the completion is March 2022.
2023.
Sorry, 2023.
Yeah.
We have time for that, but that also depending on the grant announcement. So if earlier or this year, I mean not at the end of December, sometimes maybe next year. So that is the critical time. So to expedite the construction to meet the deadline. Otherwise, we're trying to avoid construction during the summertime to reduce any impact for during that time.
Your worship, I'll add to that is I think the timelines are conceptual at this stage. I think there's room to look at those timelines and make them work for the community and the downtown businesses, as we are doing with Wharf Avenue. The construction has been set aside to start until after Labor Day. And if we can accommodate that with this project, that is certainly my preference as the Director of Engineering Operations, to have a start that's after Labor Day. Having worked in jurisdictions that have winters, I was quite excited when I came to one that doesn't have much of a winter. So I'm hoping to use the weather to have this done in the shoulder seasons if we can. But sometimes extenuating circumstances intervene, and we are forced to do it in the inopportune times. But my preference is certainly to chase a early spring start or a fall start after Labor Day.
Thank you. Councillor Toth.
Thank you. I know that as a tourist, anytime I visit other municipalities, the first thing I look for is the post office in the alternative school. So I'm glad we're not going to be disrupting tourists that are looking for those facilities. I'm happy to move recommendations 2 and 3. And Mr. Bandera read them previously, so I'm not going to read them again unless anybody asks me to.
That's fine. Is there a seconder for the recommendations? Seconded. Any further questions or comments? All those in favor? Thank you. Thank you, staff. I know this was another quick turnaround. A lot of these grants have been coming at us fast and furious and with very short timelines to respond. So thank you for doing the work that was needed in that short time frame to get this in on time. Appreciate it. All right, moving on to item 10.7, Seashell Airport tree cutting. This is for information of council. With the extension of the runway, it was identified that there were some danger trees at the airport that needed to come down. So they're actually being removed on our property this week. And we've engaged with the community forest, who is also going to, well, they've been in touch with the Seashell Nation. We had given the Seashell Nation notice earlier that we had identified some trees on their land that would need to be dealt with. And so we're working with their forestry department, and those will be cleared out as well. So that work is going on this week. If you come up on Saturday for the opening of the airport, you will see some of that work that will have been taking place. All right, that's all I got. Councillor Toth.
Thank you. Is there a cost to us for that work, or is the community forest selling the trees on and covering the work?
The community forest is covering the cost of the work for now. Once all the tree cutting is done, they will come to us and request a letter allowing them to sell the trees for us. And then the money that comes from the sale, they'll cover off the costs of the work that was done, and we will get the remainder. And that will go towards airport. Councillor Van?
You just answered my question.
Thank you.
yeah, trees coming off the airport, the money should stay there. So thank you.
Yes, thank you. All right, moving on. Councillor reports. Let's start with Councillor Lamb, and then Scott, Kuster, Rowe, and Toth. So Councillor Lamb, you're up first.
I'm off the hook. I actually just got my computer working yesterday, so I'm back in the groove. But I haven't made any of my appointments for the last little bit. But I've reached out to the groups to let them know that they can reach me again. So sorry.
Thank you.
That's it.
Okay, Councillor Scott.
Yeah, I connected with the chamber on their last meeting, and seems the biggest challenge for them, of course, is staff housing, and you see it across the coast. The number of the service industry businesses are closing Monday, Tuesday, Wednesday to deal with staff shortages, and so there was a large discussion about projects that are in place and mitigations that business owners can have to manage staff housing to ensure that they have enough workers on the coast. Continuing with planning for the airport open house this weekend, looking forward to that. Had some meetings with the district in North Vancouver in regards to their processes on managing squatters, derelict boats and such in Deep Cove and that area. Continuing to work with that, and some correspondence with Flinro on leases and looking at moving forward with partnerships to take over the Porpoise Bay and start managing that. I think people need to understand that what we're seeing out there is completely illegal. It doesn't meet any of the mooring buoy regulations and falls completely under the hazard to navigation. And there's a lot of flaunting of laws and regulations that we need to get a manage of and get a handle on. And we're continuously pushing for Patrick Weiler and Nick Simons to keep going and do the mooring buoy sweep and start the process involved, and so that we can start cleaning up Seashell Inlet. And so that will continue as we move forward.
Thank you. Councillor Kuster.
I have nothing to report this week.
Thank you very much. Councillor Rowe.
And neither do I.
All right, Councillor Todd.
And then it was quickly me. Only a couple things going on. I did attend the 5681 Ebb-Tide Developer Information Meeting. Very professional, very willing to answer questions, even some that seemed a little on the edge for developer information meeting. They were very, very open. So looking forward to them continuing to work with us. I attended the funding announcement for the Active Transportation Multi-Use Paths and Trails grant announcement up at Kinnickinnick. I just wanted to take a moment to acknowledge the hard work that our staff have done on that, including turning around that grant application as quickly as they did. Other grant opportunity earlier is further examples of being ready with a list of projects and ideas that we want to move forward with to make our community better. I have seen, as always, there's people that say, well, you shouldn't be spending the money on this. You should be spending the money on, X, Y, or Z instead. And this is money that was specifically set aside by the federal government for active transportation projects. If we wanted to build housing or solve our homelessness issue, we couldn't do it with that money. And I think, we might as well take advantage of the grant money while we can, because it could dry up at any time. We had our strategic planning last Wednesday before Committee of the Whole, and it was fantastic to see everybody in person again, including meeting Director Dillon in person, who, he's just been a little face in a box up until now. So that was great. And there's the face in the box. And finally, this morning I attended a BC Hydro electric vehicle charging infrastructure presentation. talking about their deployment of charging infrastructure, sort of where they've come from, where they're going, where they see electric vehicle demand growth moving forward. One thing that is really neat to see is that the BC government forecast 10% of vehicle sales to be electric by 2025. And as of last year for 2020, we were at like 9.7% or something like that. So I did forward that presentation on to the rest of council. We were super quick to receive it. And as was expressed to us when we received it, feel free to forward that presentation on to anybody you think should see it. So that's really all I have to report.
Thank you. Councillor Scott.
Just a question for you. Did they talk about recognizing people that have EVs charging at home as far as nighttime rates? Because we're penalized for driving it into the second tier as it stands now.
They didn't really talk too much about rates. They were mostly concerned with looking at the fast charging equipment and that infrastructure. One thing that I did ask the question on, because it was asked of me, is that right now DC fast charging is charged based on time, 21 cents a minute to use the DC fast charger, regardless of how quickly you can charge at it. And the question came up, well, why not based on the actual energy consumption? Like, that seems like it should make more sense. And the reason is because Measurements Canada is responsible for all the measuring standards when you're dealing with billing. Measurements Canada does not have a standard for DC energy consumption. And so, which I thought was really neat. I'd never heard of the reason why before. And they do expect a standard to be coming forward within the next year or so, at which point they will be looking towards changing to charge for energy consumption versus charging for time. But in terms of the nighttime and flex rates and stuff like that, that wasn't on the table. I know that BC Hydro is doing a rate review and engagement through their website right now. So it might be an opportunity to spread that message to EV owners.
Thank you. All right, most of the items have been mentioned. I'm just going to mention a couple here. MP Patrick Weiler was on the coast last week. His constituency assistant lined him up with 25 different meetings with different groups on the coast. I've really been impressed by how he's been supporting the various organizations here. And so he was looking at the budget that was just passed. How can that support our area? So I attended 2 meetings with him. One was a visit to One Straw, and the other was to a marina on the inlet. The one at One Straw, I've never been to their facility down in Roberts Creek. One Straw has been around for a lot of years here on the Sunshine Coast, and they are looking to support farming, food production, sustainable food production. And one of the things that they're looking at is, how do we provide the infrastructure for the farmers that we have, those who are producing produce or meat or whatever? How do we support them to scale up? What kind of infrastructure do we need to have that? So they're actually applying for 3 grants, 2 this week and 1 next week, to be able to provide some of the infrastructure. One of the things, for example, is a commercial kitchen that they would need to have access to, and the other is cold storage. Because in order to be able to ship or have enough for a store, typically they have to consolidate from a number of different farms. So they're looking at what that looks like. They're also in the process of revisiting the agricultural area plan that was done on the Sunshine Coast in 2013. There were a lot of recommendations in that. They're looking at identifying which ones will actually support business moving forward here. So it'll be interesting to see where they go in the next while. Marina on the inlet was with regards to, as Councillor Scott has referred to, some of the derelict boats. So we ended the meeting with a little bit of a tour around, because the marina owner basically knew everybody who was out in the inlet. So that was quite interesting. Downtown Business Association meeting this morning. They are putting their plans together for Oktoberfest. And they're looking at a full week of specials in restaurants. And then a reminder about the airport open house this Saturday, 10 till 12. Look forward to seeing the general public there. The fire department will be letting us know if they're going to be able to have the new ladder truck out there as well. They were going to be revisiting that tonight to see whether or not they had sufficient volunteers available to be with the truck. So that's all I have. Next up is our Scrd report, and it's in our agenda package. And I'm going to turn to Councillor Toth if he wants to speak to any of it.
Thank you. I did just want to touch on a couple of things real quick. At the top of page 82, when I submitted the report for inclusion, I did mention that stage 2 water conservation measures are currently in effect, and it was expected that we'd be going to stage 3 by the end of July. In fact, we're going to be in stage 3 as of July 23rd, which is Friday. So the consumption just hasn't been coming down, and moving to stage 3 earlier means that we can put off stage 4 longer, because we're relying on storage up at the lake right now. So I wanted to highlight that. And I also wanted to mention that I wasn't able to attend the Policing and Public Safety Committee or the Transportation Advisory Committee. Councillor McLean attended in my place and was supposed to be providing a verbal update, but hopefully Mayor Seegers can speak to what happened at that. I did have an item put forward to put on the TAC agenda, so I'm curious to know how it went because I wasn't there, but happy to take any questions.
I'll talk about the Policing and Public Safety Committee. There were a number of items brought forward. The RCMP representative was not in attendance, and so those will be forwarded on for feedback. I also did not attend the Transportation Advisory Committee. I had another meeting I had to get to. So Councillor McLean will need to provide that information. Any questions of Councillor Toth?
I guess we can always go watch the meeting on YouTube.
We can. All right, seeing no further questions, we have council correspondence. We have one item. So I'd look for a motion to receive the council correspondence. Moved and seconded, all in favor? Thank you. This is the status report. This is a report that is updated, I believe, weekly. It's available to all of us, and you'll notice on there, it says Sunshine Coast High. I believe we are now in extreme. Councillor Toth.
Thank you. I just wanted to touch this jog. This is BC Wildfire Service adjacent. There have been people out there looking for us to ask for backcountry bans, things like that, to try and limit access into the wilderness. And I was surprised to learn that it's not up to Flynn Roard, it's not up to any part of the government except BC Wildfire Service to determine whether a part of the backcountry should be closed or not. And they use some pretty stringent criteria to make that determination. There basically has to be active wildfire in that area. So it makes a lot of sense to me. And I was actually going to ask for us to, write a letter to ask for the backcountry to be closed, but turns out there's really nobody we can ask. So I just wanted to mention that.
There has been a lot of interest in the community because of the fires that are happening throughout BC and other provinces and down in the US. So there's been a lot of interest in the community about, what are we doing? The regional district has evacuation plans. They have wildfire plans. They recently got funding to do urban interface planning and fire smarting. So there's lots of information. If you go to the Scrd website and go to emergency planning, there's a lot of information there for residents of the community. Watch for more information coming out as these plans roll out. And please be safe out there. Signs will be put up and down the coast with fire bans, no beach fires, etc. They're in the process. The local governments are are coordinating that, and it will be going out within the next week or so. So you'll be seeing all kinds of signs out there. Any other questions or comments about the correspondence? And our CAO is here to tell us whether or not we have any emergency items.
There'll be none, Your Worship.
Thank you very much. I'd look for a motion to adjourn.